Well, hello everyone, Texie88 here and welcome to another review. And now we're taking a look at the 48K ZX Spectrum game, Computer Scrabble, which was released in 1983, and Psion Software was responsible for it, and it actually came with uh, some ZX Spectrum packs that were for sale, which is a good thing because were you to buy it by itself, according to what I can make out, it originally retailed for a whopping £15.95, which for a 1983 game would have been quite huge, considering a lot of other games around that sort of time would have been about the £5 to £6 mark. So as you can see, it caters. It doesn't matter if you've got a black and white television, because you can actually select it in such a way that it's doable on such a television. But if you've got colour, as we're using here, then you can select that as well. Do you wish to load a previously saved game? Yes or no. So that shows that you can save a game partway through and continue it on a later session if you so wish. No. Scrabble is a game for 1 to 4 players. Your spectrum can be none, any, or all of these players. We'll select 2, so I'll make one of them me and the other the spectrum. Do you want the spectrum to play for the first player? No, I don't. I'll make that me. Do you want the spectrum to play for this person? Yes. 2. It won't let me put spaces in. Do you wish to see the computer thinking? Oh, I might as well. And the first thing you notice is that despite the spectrum being limited to a selection of 8 letters colour-wise, so 8 colours colour-wise, it's actually done a pretty good job of representing the look of the actual board games board. Obviously, there's no equivalent of the pink colour, so they had to make some allowances. And you can press J to juggle the letters on your rack. And you use the cursor keys to move the move the things about. However, one thing that does irk me a little is that if you were to play this with other people, you could actually press V to view racks, and that would mean that you could see everyone else's tiles, which isn't ideal. And in fact, it can give the other players an unfair advantage. And then you just, when you're ready, when you've placed the cursor where you want the first letter of your word to appear, you just press A or for across or D for down. Notice how it automatically put the L there because the L's already there, so you only key in the letters from your rack that you wish to use. So if the game doesn't recognise a word that a human player has put, then it'll challenge it, and then it's a simple yes/no answer. The trouble is that only really works if you've got other human players, because otherwise you could very easily cheat by putting any old shit, and then just when it asks you, are you sure about such and such, you just press yes and it just accepts it, and you could get a whole shed load of points just. across. Again, it put the G there for me. I think I am. That's another problem with computer representations of Scrabble around this sort of time, because of the extreme limitations of available RAM. There's only a comparatively small number of words that could be stored in the memory at once. I mean, I think there are only about 10,000 words in the Spectrum's dictionary due to memory limitations at the time. I mean, now it wouldn't be a problem. The memories of computers and consoles these days are so high, you could have pretty much the whole official Scrabble words dictionary and books in the memory, so you wouldn't run into those difficulties. But back then, not so much. Memory was very limited and horrifically expensive at the time, at the best of times. And so down. It's put the H there for me because it's already there. So the way it generally looks and plays is fine. So look, you can see each other's racks in the bottom right corner there. If you were playing the real board game, that wouldn't be possible, because because everyone would have their tiles on racks which were facing them and only them, so you wouldn't be able to do that. Now, I am saying yes to that because there is the word "mu" because it's it's a Greek letter. Yes, "u" is a word as well. See, even if they weren't, all I'd have to do is answer yes to those, and it would accept them regardless. The computer can only play words in its memory, so it can't actually play illicit words itself. So down E. Now, to do that, I'm using those blanks. Literally what I had to do was, when I wanted to use the blank, I pressed space and then immediately followed it up with the letter I wanted the blank to represent. So it's very easy. And and I get a 50-point bonus because you do if you use all 7 of your tiles in one go. That's true of the original board game as well. Part of me is kind of glad that there was that option in this review, because then I could show you that despite the game dating back so far, that it did cater for that particular rule. Cross. Again, it put the F there because it's already there. So all in all, it plays okay for a Scrabble game of its time, and the board looks kind of nice considering the limitations of the hardware, and it gets around the Spectrum's attribute problem. While giving as pleasing a rendition of the original board game as was realistically possible with the limitations of the colour palette of the Spectrum. So I can't really fault the way it looks, especially given the age of the software. Down. Yeah, I was really surprised that Tingle wasn't in the preset dictionary. I mean, it's not like Tingle is a really obscure word, but then I guess that is one of the downsides of having such limited memories of home computers in those days. Across. So I've laid 3 words here: woe, po, and ray. Yes, it's a chamber pot, and it's accepted ray, but not Tingle. Oh, at least not without asking me if it was okay. I mean, another advantage of playing on the computer is you can't really lose tiles or anything like that. And obviously doesn't you don't have to worry about taking time packing it all away at the end of a session. Although actually loading the game up would have taken a lot longer than to set up the original board game. So it didn't challenge me on Oxide, but Tingle was a problem, apparently. And I quite like the way that it visually shows the thinking of the computer opponent. across. Yes, it's a life force. Very useful word if you ever play Scrabble and you've got a Q and there's no U. I just don't like the way that it shows everyone's racks like that. That really is a problem. Down. Yep. So I did daisies and priests there. I mean, if I wanted to, I could have put zone that O at the second O of outdo, but I didn't particularly want to put the Z in line with one of those triple word score squares. Because a triple word score square in line with the Z could potentially give the other player something that would definitely be worth over 30 points, or at least 30 points. Well, both blanks have been used, so it would have definitely been more than 30 points on this occasion. Yeah, as you can see, it doesn't. The game, presumably due to memory space limitations, doesn't remember a word that you've already accepted previously, even in the same game. Because it challenged Poe when I did Woe at the bottom of the screen earlier. I mean, the way they've shown the letters on the rack is fine, because it also shows you the score of each letter tile, which is definitely a plus, because you would see that if you were playing the real board game, so that's fine. Because it would have been a pain if you had to keep referring to the manual if you for some reason weren't entirely au fait with the scoring of the letters in Scrabble. Yes. Well, part of me sort of thinks that trying to fit a Scrabble game into 48 kilobytes of RAM was a bit of a big ask. I mean, in theory, it does a generally good job, but the fact that there's not really enough space to have a decent amount of words. I mean, you might be surprised at the kind of not particularly uncommon words that the Spectrum's dictionary simply doesn't have in its memory. Yes. And because I used up all my tiles, what was left from the computer, the points left over for U and T, which are both 1 point each, that would have meant that the computer would have lost 2 points, and I would have gained those 2 points, because that's another rule from Scrabble. And then you just see there, it's deducted the 2 points that was left in the computer's tile from it, and get passed on those points to the one who exhausted all their tiles first, namely moi. So that's Computer Scrabble for the ZX Spectrum. Valiant attempt at bringing the popular board game to one of the earliest home computers, but ultimately the limitations on RAM, coupled with some other bits and bobs, count against it. Graphics, well, they are understandably simple, and it uses a Sinclair character set, which in itself also helps to free up more memory to store, that can be used to store precious words in the built-in dictionary in the game. So I'm not going to complain about that. And the way they've done the board is about as good as it was ever going to be, especially with the attribute limitations of the Spectrum. And the way you can show the computer visually thinking is a nice touch as well. And the board itself's clear. Sound. Well, that's very easy. There isn't any. Gameplay. Well, the controls are simple enough. It's not overly heavy, and everything's really well explained. Although I couldn't get it to work for some reason. If you press J to juggle, you'd be able to randomize the order of the 7 tiles on your rack. However, as I pointed out, the fact that there's a setting which allows all of the players to see their racks on the screen, which unfortunately means they can see everyone else's rack at the same time, is a troubling aspect of trying to put the board game onto a computer. Because that does mean that unscrupulous players could take advantage of that and be put off putting a word somewhere, saying, "Oh, I can't put that there in case so and so puts this word there, and the next go and capitalises on what I lay." Because knowing that kind of thing in advance can be enough to determine what a person's next move could be. And the other big problem is the price if you didn't get it with a Spectrum computer. Nearly £16 in 1983 money is quite a lot. Especially, as I said, the computer games for the system around that sort of time tended to retail for about for roughly a third of that price. I mean, I know it's got a secondary license in the form of the actual Scrabble brand, and I understand that, but for it to charge nearly 3 times as much as a regular game, that's a bit too pricey. And the fact that, put simply, there wasn't really enough RAM to comfortably contain Scrabble, and the way it challenges words leaves it very open to cheating, especially if you're just playing by yourself. So all of that is going to count against the final score. So I give computer Scrabble for the ZX Spectrum 5 out of 10. It was a bit too ambitious to try and do a game like this on a 48K Spectrum with such limited memory and causing the built-in dictionary to be so small, coupled with that rather high price and the fact that that other players' racks are potentially in full view of everyone. Yeah, so that's why I can't really give it a high score, even though the presentation is okay, especially for a Scrabble game from 1983. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed that review. Catch you on another video soon. Texie88 out.